Good morning. How are you doing, lovely people? I hope you're well on this autumn Tuesday. I'm Marc J Acquaviva, and this is your Yoga Solutions Live on Tuesday the 15th of October 2019. I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are. And as I hope to sort of offer some solutions today. I don't think I've got any questions. I'll just have a check. Not this week. Had loads last week. Yes, I noticed there weren't any. I put this post up quite late last night, so people didn't really have time to come up with questions. But so this morning I have just had a bit of a practice of my own, and it's very nice. Interestingly, I missed my meditation this morning. I start every day with a meditation, and I used to be resistant actually. So I used to want to get on with the body part of it. The premise being that if I was not feeling entirely comfortable in my body, then how on earth can I meditate? And how can I settle into a stillness of the mind if the body's complaining? But they are related. The stillness of the mind and the body complaining. If the mind is not still, then the body will be jumping around in the same way that the mind is. So it's anyway, for the last year or so, I suppose, I've been quite addicted to starting my day with at least 20 minutes meditation, and I missed that today. So yeah, interesting. Anyway, I thought what I might like to do today in my own practice. I was playing with some simple movements and twists and that sort of thing. But I got involved with the core of the body, and I thought I might, if it's interesting for people, I thought I might have a go at offering a bit of clarity about what is meant by core. Because so it's a much used word, and what most people are referring to when they're talking about the core is they're talking about what they do to it, as in the feeling of core strength, the feeling of the effort around the core. It's an aspect of practice. It's an aspect of what the core means. It's a good idea to get a bit clearer about what we're talking about, because the idea of deliberately developing tension in this area is not good. I'm always talking about core responsiveness, as in this area, the area that people are talking about strengthening, responds when you are trying to balance, and hence the value of good Pilates and that sort of thing. It also responds naturally when you're basically intending to support yourself from your touch. So, and that's the stuff I try and get people involved in, is how they engage with the contact they make with the earth. And touch is not restricted to surfaces you can resist. Touch also includes the space that you occupy, which is sort of my theme for the month in terms of my ongoing workshops. But yes. So anyway, let's have a look at what the core is. What I'd like you to first of all tune into is that the core itself is a fluid space. mostly a fluid space. It's the space between the root, the pelvic floor, and the top of the diaphragm, which is the floor of the heart. I call it a fluid space because it's made of organs, and organs are pretty much 70, 80%, 90% water. And they behave as such. There is some structure, there is some sort of tissue structure, and there is some musculature in that you have contractile, there are the muscle fibers that contract around your digestive tract, that sort of thing. And essentially it's water, essentially it's fluid. And then above that fluid, bag of fluid, I suppose, in the lower half of the body, you have this pneumatic space, which is essentially the lungs, also involving a fair amount of fluid, but it's a pneumatic space in that the internal pressure of the whole body increases when there is air in the body, or no, that's not quite true. To bring air into the body, the diaphragm descends, creating more downward pressure on the fluid core, but also the ribs expand. It kind of depends on how you breathe. And I'm talking about potential. I might go into some of the things that can vary within that potential. But essentially speaking, what is the overall picture is that the rib cage expands in a sort of lateral direction and in a depth direction, and you have muscles that get involved with that, and the lungs inflate within that. So the expansion of that space actually creates a negative pressure to draw air into the lungs. And then what happens when the breath releases is in principle, and this is not what always happens, it's just what happens in principle, is that the rib cage kind of rests together, which involves some musculature. There's a coming together around the lungs, and that's part of what helps expel the air. But also that diaphragm that has become tense to pull air into the lungs, then retracts. It relaxes and retracts up through the rib cage. So the rib cage around that, sort of descending, coming together, is part of the movement. Okay, so it's a quite long-winded explanation of what breathing is. But it's a pneumatic space that changes the pressure within the body, if that makes sense. Okay, so when there is air in the lungs, there is more pressure within the fluid body, and then when the air leaves the lungs, there is that pressure reduces, so the fluid moves. Yes, I hope that makes some sense. So I think I'm talking about it a lot. So you stop thinking about the core as what you do. It's a space. It's a space that oscillates with different pressures. And what I'd like you to do is to explore that space to start with by taking hold of your thighs, quite close to the groins, and pressing away from yourself, as if trying to lift yourself out of your legs, if that makes any sense. And if you're someone that's used to the tilt the pelvis idea of core support, then that's probably what you'll do. You'll press your legs away, but then you'll try and pull yourself together at the front. I'd like you to let that go, and if you do let that go, and if you're supporting space between you and your legs, especially if the legs are sort of relaxing, so you're not holding them up with tension, you should feel an extension response in that the front of the spine wants to become longer. So I don't know if you can see, I'm wearing dark clothes today. If you support yourself away from the legs and do not resist with the pelvis, you just let that tail sit back and you let the thigh bones be pushed away from you, then you should, if you work hard enough to literally push yourself away from your legs. Then the shoulders will come up, that's part of it. The wings come up with space in the belly. But what you should be experiencing is the beginning of a sort of a release of visceral tension in the fluid core of the body, the fluid heart. I can explain why, if you like. The downward pressure in this particular orientation, without the intention to flatten your back, will cause more distance along the front of the spine without the diaphragm. What am I saying? No, it will cause more distance along the front of the spine so that what happens to the ribs is that they splay out. So you're getting sort of space to breathe in a lateral kind of fashion. And that splaying out is the beginning of extension in the spine as a whole. I don't want you to lift with your back. I don't want it to be active extension. I want it to be passive extension so that you can sort of release tension rather than just close the back of the spine. And all the effort is in the arms. So, and then within that, the breath will change if you let it. So, you know, if you're a belly breather, then you'll probably find this a little bit uncomfortable, in that you'll be doing that sort of thing. But if you can allow the breath to widen into your ribs in the fashion that this effort is inviting, then that'll be the ribs doing more of the breathing than the diaphragm, so that when you release the breath, there's still a sort of coming together of the ribs, which allows the diaphragm to ascend even more. So you get more visceral space by engaging with this. I mean, you could just think of it as stretching the insides, but it's not quite as basic as that. It's allowing the deep tissue along the front of the spine to let go of grip. Because basically, if we don't feel supported, your organs get tense. The muscle fibers that sort of are involved, there are contractile fibers involved in the organs, and they tend to, if they're given the job of support, they try and support you. And this will be redressing some of that. So if you feel a very strong sensation of visceral release, then fantastic. Okay. So that's a sort of one aspect of what the core is. It's a fluid space. Now, the thing that people talk about in terms of core is the sort of core effort around that. And you might notice if you continue to support space away from yourself as you release the breath, something's got to help, something's got to follow the ascension of the diaphragm. If it doesn't, then I don't know, you can't really breathe out. So what you might notice is that you're creating this space with a basic brute force with your arms. The breath accommodates that space, so it's wider across the heart. And then when you release the breath, something has to help the breath leave. It's not just the ribs, there's some deep abdominal muscles that come in a transverse style, and transverse abdominis is part of it. There's a crisscross thing. There's all the I can't remember the name now, but never mind. You know the ones I mean. It's not just up and down. It's not just side to side. There's also two versions of the angular oblique. That's it, the oblique muscles. So what was I saying? Yes, if you support that space that you've created, then as you release the breath, there's a coming together around the space you created, which isn't the same as doing the sit-up, which is basically just shortening the front line. It's a deflating towards the central axis of the spine from all directions. So the front belly moves back, the side belly moves in, and the back of the waist comes in a little as well. That the whole of you comes together around the lumbar spine as part of the assistance of this upward release of the diaphragm to help the lungs release the breath. So that's part of what core support is. It's not a holding pattern around the middle that stops the spine from moving. It's a gathering towards the spine that happens when you release the breath. And you can activate that. You can make that stronger by deciding to gather together. But the thing that I like to do is I like to relate these physical actions that we're trying to contrive in our yoga practice. I try to relate that to nature, and the nature of it is touching the ground. So if you're making an awful lot of space along the front, you're not lifting, you're just supporting, allowing an extension response. If, as you release the breath particularly, you press into the ground through everything that's touching, so it'll be my shoulders, it'll be my head, my pelvis, but the touch of the feet, with no intention to pick your pelvis up particularly, the sense of down through the feet, you might feel that pressing into the ground, not only with your feet, but with the whole of the body, so you're not trying to get anywhere, helps this action of coming together around the core, the fluid core space. So there's a sense of landing a little bit on your base, which includes your head, your shoulders, your pelvis, but it must include your feet. Because what I want to develop is a functional relationship to standing. And when you let the breath in, you can sort of imagine, if your arms aren't actually there, you can imagine letting go of holding yourself together. So you sustain the length along the front of the visceral length along the front of the spine, and then as you release the breath, again you can engage with the earth behind you and your feet, through your feet, to see if standing on your feet helps us come together. It's sort of down, but it's also away from you, so that you push through yourself to feel supported. Do it again. Sustaining that space, supporting yourself so that the space can be there and the breath can be high and wide across the heart. So you sustain, a spacious feeling in the belly. And then as you release the breath, you engage not only your head, your shoulders, but also your feet. And if there's no particular intention to tilt the pelvis or pick it up off the ground, if you push away from yourself through these active touching feet, what happens is you actually get support through the joints, through your hips, through the axis of the spine. So you basically push into the ground through your upper back and your head. But you don't have to do it so much locally. You just do it with your feet. So again, and if you've got that through your structure feeling, you won't be holding yourself up or lifting yourself with your back. You'll be supported directly by the feet. The down aspect will help the core and body come together. The away from you aspect will help support you through your structure, so you can be suspended in space with no tension in the spine whatsoever. And provided that you can let go of holding as you receive the breath, which again will rely on how you use your feet. It's the same attitude. The down of the feet helps you breathe into your back, as opposed to lift your belly. The out through the feet helps you feel supported through your joints, so you don't suddenly get heavy in the pelvis as you breathe. So the same action supports a visceral space, because you're supporting yourself through your joints, through your spine, through your axis. So the intention to let go of tension, but into your touch, the feet particularly, but also the head and shoulders. The intention to feel supported as you receive the breath means that when you release the breath, you can again land down through your feet, to get that core responsiveness, but respond by pushing away from you slightly, out through your toes, so that you feel supported all the way through your structure, little by little. And the result will be that as you come together, you feel taller and longer. And it's not you holding yourself together around the core, it's still sort of soft and responsive, but there is a great deal of activity. So I'll keep going with this. As you keep finding inner space in the fluid core, as you keep finding support around that fluid space, as you use your feet down, the through your toes feeling, the away from you feeling, starts to invoke some sort of extra response from the ribs, because essentially it's us how we walk, you see. What's going on here? Yeah. So as you attempt to keep this visceral space, but support yourself with the down to find the core responsiveness, and then support yourself through your bones, out through your toes, you should start to find that the ribs begin to wrap around the upward moving space. So when I stand on the right foot and press away from myself to support through myself, what happens, as well as the core emptying and the back and up feeling, the right ribs sort of anchor towards the left foot because I'm standing on my right foot. It's what happens when we walk. When I stand on my left foot to release the breath, the core of the body gathers, empties away from the left foot because I'm out through my toes. But the left ribs, in response to that effort, sort of gather together and wrap around that upward moving space to connect over to the right foot. So I start to walk myself up, and my ribs come together around the upward moving fluid core. And it's this two-way movement, the gathering in around the upward moving fluid space and the gathering in down around that space from the ribs, that gives me the space between my middle and my feet, my middle and my hands, because the ribs are gathering away from my hands, you see, breath by breath. Every inhale, I want to feel free to receive the breath in my hips, the back of me, my core, my fluid space, my lungs. And every out breath, I want to let go into my touch, so there's a core responsiveness. And I want to feel supported from my touch, so that the ribs start to respond to the foot. And move away from each hand of each foot to connect to the opposite foot. Then move away from each hand and each foot to connect to the opposite foot, so that I can arrive on that. So I begin to walk myself into a connection all the way through my spine between my hands and my feet. Makes it relatively simple to transfer the weight onto my hands and onto my feet. As a sort of wave-like release of tension, followed by an active connection. As I use my hands, I send my ribs to my feet. As I use my feet, I send my ribs to the opposite hand and foot. So I find this wave-like connection. That means when I release the breath, there's a potential to give my weight to my hands and my feet. Okay? Well, that was useful. I didn't actually do that this morning. What I did this morning was twists. I could do that a little bit. But, same sort of idea. You support space, to allow visceral space. You start to get involved with your ground to help gather around that space. You work hard enough through your system, through your whole structure, from your touch to feel supported until the upper half of the body starts to work to connect to your touch. And then within that, breath by breath, as the body comes together towards the middle, around the fluid core, it gives you the space at both ends for movement. So what allows the movement is a kind of turning inside out feeling around the ribcage and the upper spine. That's actually where twists are meant to come from, and back bends. Well, I enjoyed that. Hope you did. Okay, so yes, I hope that was useful. Yes, I hope you enjoyed that. So just to let you know what we've got going on, I'm on my haptic intelligence series with a group of lovely people, really enjoying it so far. And it's closed now. There will be a recorded version available at some point when I've done some editing. It won't be for a while yet though, because that takes a long time. Again, haptic intelligence is one of a series of online courses I want to run for people. The next one, I think, is going to be entitled Fluid Space. Something to do with the fluid space in the body, because it's kind of the next line of inquiry from the fundamentals of haptic feedback. Yes, keep that in mind if you missed out on the first one and want to be part of the live kind of interactive course development for the second one. Keep that in mind. Look out for posts. So when I get firm on the idea of what I want for the second course, I'll start to let people know about it a bit more. Other than that, Glasgow this Saturday in the Moment Centre. I'm doing one of my Yoga Solutions workshops for dedicated teachers, practitioners, anyone that has sort of an enthusiasm for the body-mind relationship and we're willing to allow things to change a bit so you can find some new depth and some newness, some fresh inspiration. Then come along. That's in the Moment Centre next Saturday in Glasgow. Other things I have going on, let's see. See if I can find it. Yeah, well, yes, I have some workshops. I have on the 26th of October, I am in Stretch, London. I'm doing the Yoga Solutions in the afternoon. Let's bring what you like. Let's bring whatever you like, and I'll show you how the yoga works. And the same is true for the Glasgow workshop. I have a bit more of a theme for the Glasgow one. It's about learning. It's about engaging with the space that we occupy, which is an unusual thing to do for most of us, but it's a life changer when you really understand its meaning and value. And at Stretch in London on October the 26th, it's Saturday afternoon. I'll be Stretch is a lovely place. Carl hosts some teacher trainings there, and he tends to send his teacher training students to these workshops. So it's tends to be kind of a technical workshop about specifics. So if someone has a hip issue, I show them how the hip works and how the sacroiliac junction works and all that sort of thing, and then give them things to do that refine those relationships so that there's no longer an issue. It's not just that, it could be whatever you like. Okay, that's on 26th of October. The 3rd of November, I'm up in Twickenham for the Harp Crew. It's a different venue than usual, but same group. And whoops, feels like the microphone's gone down. Okay, I'll just that's better. Yeah. Same group up in Twickenham, but Yes, so it's all about relationships, and it's a lovely workshop. That's on November the 3rd. It's a Sunday. Come along. Then later in November, I'm doing workshops in Midhurst near Guildford, another one in Angmering near Chichester. Yes, come along. It'd be nice to see you, nice to work with you live. I've also sent out an email for people near London Bridge, because I come up to do one-to-ones once a month, and the next one will be November the 13th. Okay, that'll probably do. Yes. Okay. So yeah, thank you very much. I hope that was useful. Do leave questions next time. I quite enjoy doing my own thing, but I feel more useful when I'm answering your questions directly. So do feel free to leave a question when I post the scheduled Yoga Solutions Live for next week. And until then, I'm Marc J Acquaviva of the Acquaviva School of Yoga, signing off. Let me just get the outro ready. Signing off at the same time, same place next week. Lots of love to you all.